Their body language was intimate, their conversation punctuated by Lucy's soft laughter, a sound he hadn't heard directed at him in months. When she reached across the table to brush her hand against the man's, Jason's heart sank. This wasn't a business meeting, nor was it an innocent encounter. It was an emotional affair, unfolding right before his eyes. The chill in the air seeped into Jason's car, making it hard to breathe. He clenched the steering wheel, his knuckles white, as a whirlwind of emotions overwhelmed him. Rage, confusion, heartbreak. They all collided at once. The weight of broken trust pressed down on his chest, suffocating him. The woman he had built a life with, the mother of his children, was sharing her heart with someone else. Jason's first instinct was to storm into the cafe, to confront her and the stranger in front of everyone. But as his hand reached for the door handle, he hesitated. He couldn't act on impulse, not yet.
It was a quiet Thursday evening when Jason's world began to unravel. The sky outside was a slate of gray, the kind of overcast that made the world feel heavier. He hadn't planned to follow his wife, Lucy, that night, but her behavior over the past few weeks had set his instincts on edge. Subtle changes, late-night phone calls, a guarded phone screen, and vague excuses about work obligations had planted a seed of doubt in Jason's mind. Tonight, he decided, he would finally get answers. Following her car through the dimly lit streets, Jason arrived at a small cafe tucked into the corner of downtown. The warm glow of its windows contrasted with the cold air outside, but what Jason saw through those windows chilled him to the bone. Lucy was seated at a corner table, her hands clasped around a steaming cup of coffee. Across from her sat a man, someone Jason didn't recognize. Jason's stomach churned as he watched them.
Confronting Lucy without proof would give her the opportunity to deny everything, to gaslight him into questioning his own observations. No, Jason thought, as he leaned back in his seat. He needed evidence. He needed to expose her betrayal in a way that left no room for doubt. Jason drove home that night in silence. The image of Lucy holding hands with another man burned into his mind. Every detail replayed like a haunting loop, her smile, the way she leaned in, the sparkle in her eyes that he hadn't seen in years. How long had this been going on? How many lies had she told to cover it up? The questions swirled in his mind, each one cutting deeper than the last. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair itself, it was about the lies that had eroded the foundation of their marriage. The effects of infidelity on family were immediate and overwhelming. Jason felt the distance growing between him and Lucy long before he had proof of her affair, but now, the gap seemed insurmountable. He found himself questioning every moment of their relationship, wondering how many of those moments had been tainted by deceit. Jason's children, Sophie and Liam, were too young to understand what was happening, but they could sense the tension in the house. Sophie, the more perceptive of the two, had begun asking questions. "Why doesn't Mommy eat dinner with us anymore?" she asked one evening, her big, innocent eyes searching Jason's face for answers. Jason forced a smile, swallowing the lump in his throat, and replied, "She's just busy with work, sweetheart." But the truth was that Lucy's work had become her escape, a convenient excuse to distance herself from the life they had built together. Jason's pain wasn't just his own, it was woven into the fabric of their family, and he knew that if he didn't act soon, the damage would become irreversible. The days that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and restless thoughts. Jason's internal conflict consumed him, tearing him between two choices. Should he confront Lucy now, demanding answers and forcing her to admit the truth? Or should he wait, gathering more evidence to ensure she couldn't deny her betrayal? The rage inside him begged for immediate action. He wanted to shout, to demand explanations, to make her feel the pain she had caused him. But the logical part of his mind held him back. He had read enough Reddit cheating stories to know that rushing into confrontation often backfired. Without undeniable proof, Lucy would twist the narrative, turning herself into the victim and Jason into the villain. So, Jason chose patience, a decision that tested every ounce of his self-control. He began piecing together the puzzle, scrutinizing Lucy's behavior with a new perspective. Her late-night phone calls, once dismissed as work-related, now seemed suspiciously timed. Her sudden interest in fitness and appearance, which he had once admired, now felt like preparation for someone else. Even her laughter, once the soundtrack of their happiest moments, now felt like a dagger to his heart. Jason knew he couldn't do this alone. He reached out to John, his best friend and confidant, sharing his suspicions and the pain that had been eating away at him. "You need to be smart about this, Jason," John advised. Don't confront her until you have all the facts. If she's cheating, you need to catch her in a way that leaves no room for denial. John's words echoed in Jason's mind as he began laying the groundwork for his plan. He would follow Lucy's trail, uncover the truth, and expose her betrayal, not just for himself, but for the sake of his children. Jason's decision to wait wasn't born out of fear. It was a calculated move. He needed to gather evidence, to build a case that would leave Lucy with no escape. He started small, keeping track of her comings and goings, noting the inconsistencies in her stories. Her late meetings always seemed to coincide with unexplained gaps in her schedule, and her phone was now an extension of her hand, never left unattended. Jason even began researching online, diving into Reddit cheating stories for advice from others who had faced similar betrayals. The stories were heartbreaking but empowering, offering him strategies and insights into how to navigate this painful process. One story in particular stood out, a man who had caught his cheating wife by hiring a private investigator. Inspired, Jason decided to take the same route. The private investigator, Stephen, was experienced and discreet. "I've seen a lot of cases like this," Stephen told Jason during their initial meeting. "It's never easy, but I promise you we'll get to the truth." Over the next few weeks, Stephen followed Lucy, documenting her movements and gathering evidence that confirmed Jason's worst fears. Dinners, hotel visits, and even affectionate gestures shared with the same man from the cafe. The evidence was irrefutable. Jason's heartbreak solidified into resolve. He wasn't just a victim of a marriage betrayal story, he was a man on a mission to reclaim his dignity and protect his family. As he reviewed the evidence, Jason felt a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in weeks. The truth was painful, but it was also liberating. He now had everything he needed to confront Lucy and begin the process of rebuilding his life. "I wasn't going to let my emotions take over," Jason thought, as he prepared for the inevitable confrontation. "I had to expose her affair the right way, with undeniable proof." Jason had always considered himself a trusting husband. For 10 years, his marriage to Lucy had felt stable, even happy at times. But as the months passed, subtle changes in Lucy's behavior began to set off alarm bells in Jason's mind. It started with the late-night phone calls. Lucy, once so open with her personal life, began taking calls in another room, her voice hushed and careful. She would claim it was a work colleague or a friend needing advice, but the secrecy around it gnawed at Jason's instincts. Her demeanor shifted too. Lucy became distant, her conversations with Jason growing shorter and less meaningful. She spent more time on her phone, smiling at messages she wouldn't share, and her excuses for being away from home started growing flimsy. "Work trips," she said. "Late meetings," she insisted. But Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The breaking point came one evening when Lucy came home late, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't hers. Jason asked her casually about her night, but her response was evasive, her body language tense. That night, lying in bed beside her, Jason stared at the ceiling, his mind racing. The woman he loved was slipping away, and he didn't know why or who was pulling her away. The first seeds of suspicion were planted, and Jason couldn't ignore them. He had read enough Reddit stories of cheating wives to recognize some of the signs, but he wasn't ready to confront Lucy yet, not without proof. Jason's first step was to track Lucy's phone. Using a simple app, he began to monitor her location. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Her trips to work, the gym, and the grocery store all checked out. But then, one evening, when Lucy claimed she was working late at the office, Jason noticed her location pinging at a small cafe across town. His heart sank. Over the next few weeks, similar patterns emerged. Lucy's alibis often didn't match her actual whereabouts. Work dinners turned into trips to unfamiliar places, and her late meetings coincided with visits to the same cafe or a nearby hotel. Jason began keeping a journal, documenting every inconsistency, every lie she told. Still, he needed more evidence. He decided to hire a private investigator, Stephen, who had dealt with countless cases of toxic relationships and cheating spouses. "I'll find out what's going on," Stephen assured him. "You just need to be ready for whatever we uncover." Stephen worked quickly, following Lucy over the course of several weeks. The evidence he gathered was damning. Photos of Lucy meeting a man at the cafe, holding hands as they walked to his car, and even checking into a hotel together. Jason's worst fears were confirmed. His wife wasn't just distant, she was deeply involved in an affair. As Jason continued to gather evidence, he began plotting his next move. Confrontation was inevitable, but it had to be on his terms. He wanted Lucy to feel the weight of her betrayal, the consequences of her actions. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming his life and protecting his children from the fallout of her affair. The tension in their home grew thicker with each passing day. Sophie and Liam, sensing the unease between their parents, began acting out. Sophie became withdrawn, while Liam grew clingy, seeking comfort in Jason's presence. Jason's heart broke as he saw the effects of infidelity on family playing out before his eyes. Lucy's betrayal wasn't just hurting him, it was tearing their family apart. Jason knew he couldn't wait much longer. The evidence was piling up, and his resolve was growing stronger. He had read enough infidelity revenge stories to know that the moment of confrontation would be pivotal. He would expose Lucy's lies, protect his children, and begin the process of rebuilding his life. But for now, Jason bided his time, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. The storm was coming, and Jason was ready to face it head-on. Jason had always been a man who believed in second chances, in the possibility of salvaging what was broken. Despite the mounting evidence of Lucy's infidelity, a part of him still hoped that he was wrong, that she might choose their marriage over the affair if given the opportunity. With this in mind, Jason decided to test her loyalty. He planned a romantic evening, something they hadn't done in years. Dinner reservations were made at their favorite restaurant, the one where they had celebrated their anniversary years ago. He even booked a room at a boutique hotel downtown, hoping to rekindle the intimacy they had lost. Jason poured his heart into the plan, wanting to see if Lucy would prioritize their relationship or continue down the destructive path she had chosen. On the day of the date, Jason approached Lucy with a warm smile. "I have a surprise for you tonight," he said. Lucy looked up from her phone, her expression unreadable. "A surprise?" she asked, her tone hesitant. "What kind of surprise?" Jason explained the evening he had planned, watching for any flicker of excitement or appreciation in her eyes. But Lucy's response was lukewarm at best. "That sounds nice," she said, glancing at her phone again. "But I might have to work late. I'll let you know." That evening, as Jason waited for Lucy to come home, his phone buzzed with a text message. "I'm so sorry, Jason. Something came up at work. Let's reschedule." Jason didn't need to check her location tracker to know she wasn't at the office. The excuse was as transparent as it was painful. Lucy had made her choice, and it wasn't him. The disappointment of Lucy canceling their date was only the beginning of Jason's heartbreak. Determined to uncover the full truth, he followed up with Steven, the private investigator he had hired. The latest report contained a revelation that took the betrayal to unimaginable heights. Lucy's lover wasn't a stranger. He was Andrew, a longtime family friend and Jason's business partner. The discovery hit Jason like a freight train. Andrew wasn't just someone he trusted professionally, but someone who had been a part of their personal lives for years. He had attended their family gatherings, celebrated birthdays and holidays with them, and even babysat their children on occasion. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was deeply intertwined with every aspect of Jason's life. Jason's mind raced as he recalled moments that now took on a sinister new meaning. The times Andrew had lingered too long in conversation with Lucy, the inside jokes they shared, the times he had dismissed their familiarity as harmless. The realization that Andrew had been betraying him not only as a friend, but as a business partner, escalated the marriage betrayal story to a level Jason hadn't anticipated. This twist changed everything. The affair was no longer just a personal betrayal, it was a professional and social scandal waiting to erupt. Jason's anger began to shift into something sharper, more focused. He wasn't just a victim anymore. He was a man with a mission to expose the truth and ensure there were consequences for cheating. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Jason. The devastation of the betrayal threatened to consume him, but he refused to let it. Instead, he channeled his pain into determination. If Lucy and Andrew thought they could get away with their lies, they were sorely mistaken. Jason began devising a plan to publicly expose her infidelity. He wasn't interested in a quiet confrontation behind closed doors. The betrayal had been public. It had infiltrated their family, their business, their social circle. The truth deserved to be just as public. His first step was to gather more evidence. While Steven had already provided him with damning photos and records, Jason wanted to ensure that every detail was airtight. He reviewed financial records, uncovering transactions that pointed to Lucy funding her secret rendezvous with Andrew. He sifted through text messages and emails, compiling a comprehensive timeline of their affair. The more evidence he gathered, the stronger his case became. Jason's resolve was fueled by the knowledge that Lucy and Andrew's actions weren't just hurting him, they were hurting his children. Sophie and Liam had started noticing the tension in the house. Sophie, ever observant, asked Jason one night, "Why does Mommy always look at her phone when we're eating dinner? Doesn't she like talking to us anymore?" The effects of infidelity on family were painfully clear. Lucy's actions were driving a wedge between her and her children, and Jason couldn't stand by and let it continue. He vowed to protect Sophie and Liam, to create a home where they felt safe and loved. Lucy's betrayal had already cost them enough. With his evidence in hand, Jason began planning the confrontation. He wanted it to be impactful, a moment that would leave no room for denial or manipulation. After much deliberation, he decided on a dinner party. The idea was simple: invite family and close friends under the guise of celebrating their anniversary, then reveal the truth in a way that would hold Lucy and Andrew accountable. The plan required precision. Jason worked with Steven to ensure that every piece of evidence was ready to present. He rehearsed his speech, carefully crafting his words to convey the depth of his pain while maintaining his composure. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. Lucy and Andrew needed to face the consequences of their actions, both personally and professionally. As the date of the dinner approached, Jason felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. He knew the confrontation would be explosive, but he also knew it was necessary. The lies had gone on long enough. It was time for the truth to come to light. The night of the dinner, Jason stood in front of the mirror adjusting his tie. He looked at his reflection, seeing a man who had been broken but refused to stay that way. This is it, he thought. No more lies, no more betrayal. The room was filled with laughter and chatter when Jason entered, carrying a folder containing the evidence. As he looked around at the faces of his friends and family, he felt a surge of emotion. These were the people who deserved to know the truth, who had been unknowingly caught in the web of Lucy and Andrew's lies. Jason took a deep breath, stepping forward to address the room. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice steady. "I wanted to share something important with you. It's not easy, but it's necessary." Jason knew that exposing Lucy's betrayal in private wouldn't be enough. Her lies had infected their marriage, their family, and their social circle. If she had been bold enough to carry on an emotional affair with Andrew, Jason's family friend and business partner, then the truth deserved to be equally bold. He decided to orchestrate a public confrontation, one that would leave no room for denial or manipulation. Under the guise of celebrating their anniversary, Jason invited close friends and family to a dinner party at their home. He sent out invitations with a cheerful tone, hinting at a night of laughter and reminiscing about the couple's shared years together. Lucy, unaware of his plan, seemed indifferent to the event. "Do we really need to do this?" she asked one evening, scrolling through her phone. "I'm not sure I'll have time to plan anything." "Don't worry," Jason replied, his voice calm. "I'll take care of everything." Behind the scenes, Jason was meticulously preparing for the night. He worked with Steven, the private investigator, to compile the evidence into a slideshow. Photos of Lucy and Andrew at the cafe, hotel receipts, and screenshots of incriminating text messages were all woven into a presentation that would expose the affair in vivid detail. Jason rehearsed his speech, determined to remain composed despite the whirlwind of emotions building inside him. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about accountability. The evening of the dinner arrived and the house was filled with the hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. Friends and family gathered around the dining table, exchanging stories and laughter. Jason moved through the crowd with a calm demeanor, greeting guests and thanking them for coming. But beneath his calm exterior, his heart raced. Lucy, dressed in a sleek black dress, played the part of the gracious hostess. She smiled and chatted with their guests, her behavior so convincing that Jason almost doubted what he knew. Almost. The evidence in his back pocket was a stark reminder of the truth. As dinner was served, Jason took his seat at the head of the table, glancing around at the faces of the people who had come to celebrate their marriage. Andrew was notably absent, a deliberate choice on Jason's part. He hadn't invited him, knowing that his presence would derail the careful plan he had crafted. Tonight was about Lucy and the lies she had woven. When the meal was finished, Jason stood, raising his glass to signal the start of a toast. The room quieted, all eyes turning to him. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Jason began, his voice steady. It means a lot to have so many of our loved ones here to celebrate this milestone. 10 years of marriage is no small feat, and I'd like to take a moment to reflect on what those years have meant." Lucy smiled faintly, but there was an uneasiness in her eyes. She didn't know what was coming, but Jason could tell she sensed something was off. Jason's speech began with heartfelt words about their early years together, the love they had shared, and the life they had built. But as he spoke, his tone shifted. "Marriage isn't easy," he said, his gaze locking on Lucy. "It requires trust, loyalty, and honesty. And when those things are broken, it's not just the marriage that suffers, it's the entire family." The room grew tense, the air thick with anticipation. Lucy's smile faltered, and she glanced around nervously, as if searching for an escape. Jason reached for the remote control, turning on the projector he had set up earlier. "I've prepared a slideshow," he said, his voice calm but firm. "A look back at the last few months of our marriage." The first slide appeared on the wall, a photo of Lucy and Andrew at the cafe, their hands intertwined. Gasps filled the room as the slideshow continued, each image more damning than the last. There were photos of them entering a hotel, screenshots of their text messages, and even a time-stamped receipt from a romantic dinner they had shared. Lucy's face turned pale, her eyes wide with shock. "Jason, what is this?" she stammered, her voice trembling. But Jason didn't respond. He let the evidence speak for itself. The room erupted into whispers and gasps as the slideshow ended. Jason turned to Lucy, his expression a mix of sadness and resolve. "This," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "is the truth. This is what you've been doing behind my back while I was at home raising our children and keeping our family together." Lucy broke into tears, her hands trembling as she tried to form words. Jason, I can explain," she sobbed. "It's not what it looks like. Please, let me explain." But Jason wasn't interested in explanations. The evidence was clear, and no amount of excuses could undo the damage she had caused. "You didn't just cheat on me," he said, his voice rising. "You cheated on our family, on Sophie and Liam, on everything we built together." The room was silent, the weight of Jason's words hanging heavy in the air. Friends and family looked at Lucy with a mix of disbelief and disappointment. Some shook their heads, others whispered to each other, trying to process what they had just witnessed. One guest, a close friend of Jason's, spoke up. "Lucy, how could you do this? To Jason, to your kids? I can't believe this." Lucy's tears flowed freely, but her attempts to defend herself only made things worse. "I made a mistake," she cried. "I wasn't thinking clearly. It didn't mean anything." Jason's laugh was bitter. "Didn't mean anything?" he repeated. "You risked our marriage, our family, for something that didn't mean anything? That's supposed to make it better?" The night of the dinner party ended with Lucy sobbing in front of their stunned friends and family. The next morning, Jason awoke to silence in the house, but his mind was anything but quiet. The confrontation had been cathartic, but it also left a void, one filled with uncertainty about what came next. He knew Lucy would try to explain, to justify, or to beg for forgiveness. He braced himself for it, and she didn't disappoint. "Jason, please," Lucy said later that day, her voice trembling as she stood in the doorway of his home office. Her makeup was smudged and her eyes were swollen from crying. "I made a mistake. I was lost. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Jason looked up from his desk, his face calm but cold. He had replayed this moment in his mind countless times, imagining what she might say and how he would respond. "You didn't mean for it to happen?" he said, his voice steady but laced with bitterness. "You carried on a months-long affair with someone who's supposed to be my friend. That wasn't a mistake, Lucy. That was a choice." Lucy collapsed into a chair, her sobs filling the room. "I'll do anything to fix this. Please, Jason, for the kids." But Jason wasn't moved. "This isn't fixable," he said firmly. "You didn't just break my trust, you betrayed our family. Sophie and Liam deserve better than this chaos." Lucy's pleads continued over the following days, but Jason remained resolute. He couldn't reconcile with someone who had destroyed their marriage so thoroughly. Her tears and apologies felt hollow, and he refused to let her manipulate him with guilt. It wasn't just about him anymore, it was about creating a stable future for their children. While Lucy begged for forgiveness, Andrew, her lover and Jason's former business partner, faced his own set of consequences. The fallout from the affair spread quickly through their social circle, and Andrew's reputation took a nosedive. Friends who once admired him now avoided him, unwilling to associate with someone who had betrayed not only a friend but also a family. professionally, the consequences were even more severe. Jason, as the majority owner of their business, wasted no time in cutting ties with Andrew. With the help of his lawyer, he forced Andrew out of the company, citing a breach of trust and ethical misconduct. Andrew's protests were feeble. He knew he had no leg to stand on. Andrew's career unraveled as word of his affairs spread. Potential clients and collaborators avoided him, unwilling to work with someone whose personal scandals had spilled into his professional life. He became a pariah, both socially and professionally, and the life he had built crumbled around him. For Jason, this was a small victory. While it didn't erase the pain of the betrayal, it brought a sense of justice. Andrew had chosen to betray him, and now he was paying the price. The consequences of cheating were far-reaching, and Andrew's downfall was a reminder that actions have repercussions. As the dust settled from the initial fallout, the divorce proceedings began. Lucy, who had been so tearful and apologetic in private, took a very different approach in court. Determined to salvage her reputation and gain the upper hand, she resorted to false accusations in divorce to shift blame onto Jason. Her claims were as outrageous as they were baseless. She alleged that Jason had been emotionally distant and controlling, painting herself as the victim of an unhappy marriage. She even suggested that his behavior had pushed her into the affair, framing it as a cry for help rather than a betrayal. But Jason was prepared. He presented the court with the evidence he had gathered, the photos, text messages, and financial records that documented Lucy's affair in painful detail. His lawyer argued that her actions demonstrated a lack of judgment and stability, making her unfit for primary custody of their children. The custody battle was grueling, filled with emotional stakes and legal drama. Lucy fought hard, insisting that she deserved to keep the children because she had been their primary caregiver. But Jason refused to back down. He knew that Sophie and Liam needed a stable, loving environment, free from the chaos and deceit that Lucy had brought into their lives. In court, Jason spoke passionately about his commitment to his children. "Sophie and Liam are my priority," he said. "I want them to grow up in a home where honesty, trust, and respect are valued. Lucy's actions have shown that she can't provide that." After months of legal wrangling, the court ruled in Jason's favor. He was awarded primary custody, while Lucy was granted limited visitation rights. The decision was a hard-fought victory, but it came with a bittersweet edge. The marriage was over, and the family had been irreparably changed. Winning custody of his children was a relief, but it didn't erase the emotional scars left by Lucy's betrayal. Jason found himself grappling with anger, sadness, and self-doubt. The process of healing from infidelity trauma was slow and painful, but it was also necessary. Jason threw himself into his role as a father, focusing on creating a sense of normalcy for Sophie and Liam. He made their home a safe haven, filled with laughter, love, and stability. He took them to school, helped with homework, and planned weekend adventures to distract them from the tension of the divorce. At the same time, Jason sought therapy to process his emotions. In his sessions, he talked about the betrayal, the confrontation, and the challenges of moving forward. His therapist encouraged him to let go of the resentment and focus on rebuilding his confidence. Through therapy, Jason began to see the affair not as a reflection of his own shortcomings, but as a failure on Lucy's part. "Her choices don't define me," he realized. "I'm still the man I've always been, a good father, a loyal friend, and someone who values honesty and integrity." Jason also began to focus on himself. He joined a local fitness group, took up painting, a hobby he had abandoned years ago, and started exploring new interests. These activities gave him a sense of fulfillment and reminded him that life could still be beautiful, even after betrayal. As time passed, Jason started to feel like himself again. The trauma of the affair no longer consumed him. Instead, it became a chapter in his life that, while painful, had made him stronger. The aftermath of a cheating spouse was devastating, but it also gave Jason the opportunity to rebuild, to rediscover his strength, and to create a new life for himself and his children. The days after the divorce were quieter than Jason had anticipated. The chaos that had defined his life for months, the lies, the confrontation, the intense legal battles, was finally over. Left in the stillness, Jason had time to reflect on everything that had happened. Lucy's betrayal had nearly destroyed him. There were days when the weight of the pain felt unbearable, when the world seemed to collapse under the weight of her lies. But as Jason sat in his now peaceful home, he realized something important. He had survived. The betrayal had shattered the life he knew, but it had also forced him to rebuild a stronger foundation. He had fought for his children, for his dignity, and for a life free from the toxicity of Lucy's affair. The person he saw in the mirror now wasn't the same man who had doubted himself in the beginning. He had grown stronger, more resilient, and more determined to move forward. Recalling the moment he handed Lucy the divorce papers, Jason felt a sense of closure. It wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the end of a toxic relationship that had been eroding his happiness for years. Sometimes betrayal is the catalyst for a better future, he thought to himself. I lost a toxic marriage but gained my freedom and self-respect. The divorce, while liberating, came with its own set of challenges. Lucy's affair hadn't just drained Jason emotionally, it had also left him financially vulnerable. During their marriage, Lucy had funneled money into her secret relationship with Andrew, leaving their joint savings depleted. Rebuilding his finances became one of Jason's top priorities. Jason threw himself into his work, using his business as a way to regain financial stability. After firing Andrew, his former business partner and Lucy's lover, Jason had taken full control of the company. The process wasn't easy. Andrew's actions had damaged the company's reputation, and it took months of hard work to restore trust with clients. But Jason was determined. He streamlined operations, expanded his network, and took on new clients to ensure the business thrived. His efforts paid off. Within a year, Jason had not only recovered from the financial losses caused by the divorce, but had also grown the company to new heights. He started a college fund for Sophie and Liam, ensuring their futures would be secure. Rebuilding your finances after divorce wasn't just about money for Jason. It was about reclaiming his independence and creating a stable foundation for his children. Jason also became more mindful of his personal finances. He created a budget, invested wisely, and built a financial cushion for emergencies. The lessons he learned from the betrayal weren't limited to his emotional life. They extended to every aspect of his future. With financial stability restored, Jason shifted his focus to what mattered most, his children. Sophie and Liam had been his anchor throughout the turmoil, and he was determined to give them a happy, stable home. Winning custody of his children had been one of the most significant victories of the divorce, and Jason didn't take that responsibility lightly. He made a point of being present for every milestone, big or small. He attended parent-teacher conferences, cheered them on at soccer games, and spent weekends exploring parks and museums. Jason wanted Sophie and Liam to know that no matter what had happened, they were loved and supported unconditionally. At the same time, Jason began to rebuild his personal life. The betrayal had left him hesitant to trust again, but he refused to let Lucy's actions define his future. Slowly, he opened himself up to the possibility of love. He joined a local fitness group where he met Maria, a woman who had also experienced the heartbreak of betrayal. Their shared experiences created a bond of trust and understanding that felt refreshingly different from his past relationship. Jason was cautious but hopeful. Maria valued honesty and loyalty, qualities that had been absent in his marriage to Lucy. For the first time in years, Jason felt a spark of happiness that wasn't tied to his role as a father or a businessman. It was a reminder that while the past had been painful, the future was still full of possibilities. As Jason reflected on his journey, he realized how much he had learned, not just about betrayal and healing, but about himself. The legal battles, the custody fight, and the emotional toll of fighting for custody after infidelity had tested him in ways he never thought possible. But through it all, Jason had discovered a strength he didn't know he had. The legal battles of a divorce case had been grueling, especially when Lucy tried to use false accusations in divorce to shift blame onto him. But Jason had stood his ground, presenting the evidence of her affair and proving that he was the more stable parent. The court's decision to grant him custody was a testament to his perseverance and dedication to his children. Jason also realized the importance of emotional healing. The process of healing after betrayal hadn't been easy. There were days when the pain felt insurmountable. But therapy, self-reflection, and the support of his friends and family had helped him move forward. He learned to let go of the anger and resentment, choosing instead to focus on the love he had for his children and the hope he had for the future. Sometimes betrayal is the catalyst for a better future, Jason thought as he watched Sophie and Liam playing in the backyard. I've lost so much, but I've also gained something far more valuable: freedom, self-respect, and the chance to build a life that's truly mine. Jason's story didn't end with the divorce. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. He was no longer defined by Lucy's betrayal or the pain it caused. He was a father, a businessman, and a man who had risen above the heartbreak to create a brighter future for himself and his family. And for anyone else dealing with a similar betrayal, Jason had one piece of advice: you're stronger than you think. Don't let someone else's lies and deceit define your worth. Take control of your story and write your own ending.